The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Ambassador Velix of the Calarian Empire stood at the center, his tall, thin body shaking with fear. His pale blue skin looked almost white under the bright lights. The other alien representatives watched him with worried eyes. Velix pressed a button on his device. A hologram appeared above his head. It showed his home planet, Calaria Prime. But something was very wrong with the image. The beautiful crystal cities were broken. Strange, dark shapes moved across the surface like a disease. "Please," Velix said, his voice breaking, "we need help. The Vorthak swarm has come to our world." A soft gasp went through the crowd. Everyone knew about the Vorthak swarm. They were living nightmares that ate entire planets. Part machine, part beast. They turned peaceful worlds into hunting grounds. The hologram changed. It now showed the Calarians trying to fight. Velix's people were gentle creatures. They had long, thin arms and legs. Their bones were light because their planet had weak gravity. For thousands of years they had lived in peace, studying the stars and making art. They had no weapons. They had no armies. The Vorthak creatures in the hologram looked like metal spiders mixed with hungry wolves. They moved fast and killed everything they found. The Calarians ran from them, but they could not run fast enough. "My people are dying," Velix continued. His large eyes were wet with tears. "The swarm takes our cities. They capture our children. They change our people into things like them. We have maybe 2 months before everyone is gone." The council chamber stayed quiet. Finally, General Zix of the Zephyrian Empire stood up. His crystal body glowed with soft light. "We feel great sadness for your people," he said in a voice like singing glass. "But the Vorthak have made your world too dangerous. Our soldiers cannot survive there now." Admiral Depthswalker of the Oceanic Federation made a sound like waves crashing. "The air on your planet is now poison," she gurgled. "Our people would die in minutes." Lord Brightness of the Luminous Collective flickered like a flame. "The gravity changes, and radiation would destroy our energy forms. We cannot help in this way." One by one, the great powers of the galaxy said no. Each had good reasons. Each was truly sorry. But none would send their people to die on a world that had become hell. Velix fell to his knees. His hope was dying. His people would face the swarm alone. They would all die or become monsters themselves. The great Calarian libraries would burn. Their art would be destroyed. Their children would never see another sunset. Then a new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "We'll do it." Everyone turned to look. The voice belonged to a human female. She was much shorter than most of the other beings in the room. Her skin was dark brown, and she had black hair tied back tight. She wore a simple blue uniform with the symbol of Earth on it. This was Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Terran Expeditionary Force. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. Most aliens thought they were still barbarians. They came from a world called Earth that was known for being extremely dangerous. "Excuse me?" said General Zix, his crystal body flashing with surprise. "Did the human just volunteer?" Elena walked forward. Her boots made hard sounds on the floor. She moved like a predator, smooth and ready for anything. The other aliens moved away from her without thinking about it. "You heard me right," Elena said. "Earth will send a force to help the Calarians." The council chamber exploded with noise. Aliens chittered, buzzed, and sang with shock. Lord Brightness flickered so fast he looked like a strobe light. "Impossible," called out Senator Silkwing of the Ethereal Dominion. "Your people cannot survive where others fail. You are too new to space, too primitive." Elena smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had heard doubts before and proved them wrong. "Maybe you forget where we come from," she said. "Earth is what you call a Class 12 death world. Everything there tries to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, even tiny things you cannot see. She walked closer to the center of the chamber. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have lived through volcanic winters and asteroid impacts. We fight wars in deserts where the air burns your lungs. We work underwater where the pressure would crush most of you. We live in places with radiation that would cook your insides. The chamber became quiet again. Elena turned to face Velix, who was looking at her with desperate hope. The Vorthak think they have made your world impossible to live on, Elena said. But they made it just like home for us. Dangerous? Yes. Deadly? Sure. But we have been dealing with dangerous and deadly our whole lives. She held out her hand to help Velix stand up. My government will need to approve it. But I can promise you this. If Earth says yes, we will come. And we will not leave until your people are safe, or every last human is dead. Velix took her hand and stood. For the first time in months, he felt hope. Maybe these strange, violent humans could do what no one else would try. Why? Velix whispered. Why would you risk so much for people you barely know? Elena looked around the chamber at all the aliens who had said no. Then she looked back at Velix. Because someone has to, she said. And because we can. The military station orbiting Earth's moon was buzzing with activity. Admiral Chen stood in the main briefing room, watching hundreds of humans prepare for something that should have been impossible. 3 days had passed since Captain Rodriguez had volunteered Earth's help. 3 days since the Galactic Council had stared in shock at the crazy humans. Admiral Chen was a short, stocky man, with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. He had fought in Earth's last great war and knew what humans could do when they had to. He also knew what it cost. Listen up, he called out to the crowd of volunteers. What we are about to do has never been tried before. Every other species in the galaxy thinks we are going to die. They might be right. The room stayed quiet. Chen looked at the faces staring back at him. These were not normal soldiers. Earth had sent out a call for volunteers, and the response had been amazing. Marines from every nation had signed up. So had asteroid miners, deep-sea workers, and people who cleaned up disasters. Kelaria Prime is no longer a garden world, Chen continued. The Vorthak swarm has turned it into hell. The air is poison. The ground is covered with acid. There are creatures there that will try to eat you, infect you, or turn you into one of them. The gravity keeps changing, and radiation levels would kill most aliens in hours. A Marine near the front raised her hand. Her name was Sarah Kim, but everyone called her Doc. She was a xenobiologist who studied alien life forms. Sir, what makes us think we can survive where others cannot? Chen smiled grimly. Because we come from Earth. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years, and we are still here. Poisonous air. We have gas masks, acid ground, we have protective boots, radiation, we have suits for that, gravity changes, our inner ears can adapt faster than any other species. He pressed a button, and a hologram appeared. It showed samples of the Vorthak creatures that had been captured by long-range probes. They looked like nightmares made real. Some had too many teeth, others had claws instead of hands. All of them moved wrong, like broken toys. These things hunt by causing fear, Chen explained. They release chemicals that make most species panic and run. But humans have been dealing with predators for our entire history. We learn to think clearly when we are afraid. We learn to fight back. Colonel Martinez, the mission commander, stood up next. He was a big man with a voice like thunder. We have studied how other species tried to fight the Vorthak. They used energy weapons and tried to fight from a distance. That does not work because the Vorthak adapt too quickly. He gestured to the weapons racks along the walls. Instead of the glowing energy guns that other aliens preferred, there were simple kinetic weapons, rifles that fired metal bullets, grenades that exploded with fire and metal pieces, shotguns loaded with special shells. We are going old school, Martinez said. Bullets, explosives, and fire. Things that worked on Earth will work there too. The Vorthak have never faced weapons like these because no other species is crazy enough to use them. Sergeant Marcus Webb was checking his equipment at a table nearby. He was a demolitions expert who had grown up in the Australian outback, where everything was trying to kill you. He looked up at the briefing with interest. "What about the local population?" asked a Navy SEAL named Johnson. "How do we tell the difference between Calarians and infected ones?" Dr. Kim answered this one. "The infected ones move differently. They jerk around like puppets. Real Calarians are graceful even when they are scared. Also, infected ones cannot speak properly anymore. They only make clicking sounds." She pulled up another hologram. This one showed the Calarian body structure. They are fragile but intelligent. Their bones break easily, but their minds are very advanced. If we can get them to safety, they can help us understand Vorthak technology. The briefing continued for hours. They discussed tactics, equipment, and evacuation procedures. The humans planned like they had been fighting alien monsters their whole lives, because in a way, they had been. Earth's history was full of creatures that should have been impossible to defeat. Lieutenant Torres, a former disaster relief coordinator, raised her hand. "Sir, the other species keep saying this mission is suicide. What do we tell our families?" Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke slowly and clearly. "We tell them the truth. This mission is extremely dangerous. Many of us might not come home. But if we do not try, an entire species will die or worse, and that is not something humans can live with." He looked around the room at all the volunteers. "Every person here chose to be here. No one was forced. No one was tricked. You all know what Earth is like. You know what humans can survive. And you know that sometimes doing the right thing means taking a big risk." Captain Rodriguez entered the briefing room at that moment. She had been in meetings with Earth's leaders for 3 days. She looked tired but determined. "The mission is approved," she announced. The room exploded with cheers and applause. When it got quiet again, she continued. "We launch in 6 hours. Final equipment check in 2 hours. And remember, the galaxy is watching. Let us show them what humans can do." As the crowd began to break up and prepare for launch, Dr. Kim approached Admiral Chen. "Sir, do you really think we can win?" Chen looked out the window at Earth below. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from space, but he knew better. He knew about the hurricanes and earthquakes, the diseases and predators, the ice ages and volcanic eruptions. He knew about the humans who had survived all of it. "I think," he said finally, "that the Vorthak have never met anything like us. They expect their enemies to be smart and civilized and careful. We are smart, yes. But we are also crazy enough to charge into hell with a smile on our faces." He turned to look at her. "The Vorthak think they are the ultimate predators, but they have never hunted on a death world, and they have never been hunted by Deathworlders." The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Calaria system. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the lead ship, looking at what had once been a beautiful world. Calaria Prime hung in space like a sick eye. The planet that had been covered in crystal cities and green gardens was now brown and red. Strange clouds swirled around it, and the whole planet seemed to pulse like a living thing. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Torres, staring at the scanner readings. "The atmosphere is 30% toxic gas now. And look at these radiation levels. Any other species would turn around right now," said Colonel Martinez. "Good thing we are not any other species." The fleet moved closer to the planet. Through their telescopes, they could see the Vorthak changes up close. The beautiful crystal spires of Calarian cities had been twisted into dark, organic towers. Strange webs of flesh and metal stretched between buildings. And everywhere there was movement. Too much movement. "There," said Dr. Kim, pointing at a scanner display. "I am picking up Calarian life signs in the old capital city. About 2,000 survivors hiding underground. That is where we start, Rodriguez decided. Martinez, get your teams ready. We are going in hard and fast. The first wave of dropships launched from the human fleet. Each one carried 20 soldiers in full environmental suits. The suits were not the sleek, elegant protection that other species used. They were bulky, tough, and built to keep working even when everything went wrong. Sergeant Webb was in the lead dropship, checking his weapons one more time. Next to him sat Corporal Johnson, a former deep-sea welder who was used to working in places that would crush normal people. Across from them sat Private Martinez, a young woman who had grown up in the radioactive zones around old nuclear plants. 30 seconds to landing, called the pilot. Fair warning, the ground is moving down there. Webb looked out the window and saw what the pilot meant. The surface of Calaria Prime was covered with a thick, dark substance that rippled like water. It was part of the Vorthak biological network. And it was alive. The dropship hit the ground with a hard bump. The doors opened, and the humans stepped out into hell. The air outside was thick and green. It hissed when it touched their suits, trying to eat through the metal. The ground under their feet was soft and warm, like walking on rotten meat. Strange sounds came from all directions, clicking, scraping, and something that might have been screaming. Jesus, muttered Johnson, watching his radiation detector climb higher. This place makes the Chernobyl exclusion zone look like a vacation spot. Stay focused, Webb ordered. We have a job to do. They moved toward the ruins of the capital city. What had once been elegant crystal buildings were now twisted into impossible shapes. Flesh and metal grew together in patterns that hurt to look at. And from the shadows between the buildings, things were watching them. The first Vorthak drone attacked without warning. It dropped from above like a spider the size of a car. It had too many legs and too many teeth, and it moved faster than anything that big should be able to move. But humans had been dealing with predators for millions of years. Johnson rolled to the side and came up with his shotgun ready. The blast of metal pellets took off two of the creature's legs. Webb followed up with a grenade that exploded in a ball of fire and shrapnel. When the smoke cleared, the drone was dead. Contact, Webb radioed to the other teams. Drones are fast but not too smart. Stick together and watch the high ground. More attacks came as they moved deeper into the city. The Vorthak sent different types of creatures at them. Some were fast and tried to overwhelm them with numbers. Others were big and tried to smash through their defenses. All of them were designed to cause fear, but fear was something humans had learned to work with. When Private Martinez saw a drone the size of a bus charging at her, she did not run. She planted her feet, aimed her rocket launcher, and put a high-explosive round right down its throat. When Corporal Johnson found himself surrounded by smaller drones that tried to inject him with something that would turn him into one of them, he did not panic. He activated his flamethrower and turned them all into burning meat. The humans fought like humans always had, with tools, teamwork, and the kind of stubborn refusal to die that had gotten them through ice ages and asteroid impacts. They reached the entrance to the underground shelters where the Calarians were hiding, but it was blocked by a massive Vorthak growth that looked like a combination of tree roots and muscle tissue. It was too thick to blow up and too strong to cut through. Ideas? Asked Webb, looking at the obstacle. Dr. Kim had been studying the growth with her scanner. It is alive, which means it has a nervous system. It is also connected to the larger network, which means... She pulled out a small device that looked like a sonic screwdriver. This puts out a signal that should overload its nerve endings. She activated the device. The massive growth began to writhe and twist. Then, with a sound like a giant screaming, it pulled back and curled up like a hurt animal. "Nice work, Doc," said Webb. "Everyone, into the tunnels." The underground shelters were dark and smelled of fear. The Calarians who had been hiding there for weeks looked like ghosts. Their pale blue skin had turned almost white, and their large eyes were full of terror. When they saw the humans coming toward them in their bulky suits and carrying weapons, some of them tried to hide. "Easy," said Dr. Kim, switching to the universal translator. "We are here to help. We are from Earth." One of the Calarians, an elderly female named Scholar Tellen, stepped forward. You came," she whispered. "The council said no one would come." "The council was wrong," said Webb, pulling off his helmet. His human face was scarred and weathered, but his eyes were kind. "We are going to get you out of here." Scholar Tellen looked at the humans in amazement. They were so different from her people, short and thick where Calarians were tall and thin. Their skin was dark and rough where hers was pale and smooth. They moved like predators, but they had risked everything to save strangers. "How many of you are there?" she asked. "Not enough," Webb admitted, "but we are very hard to kill." As if to prove his point, alarms started going off. The Vorthak had found the entrance to the shelter, and they were coming down. "Time to go," Webb announced. He turned to his team. "Johnson, Martinez, set up a perimeter. Doc, get the civilians ready to move. Everyone else prepare for company." The sound of claws on metal echoed through the tunnels, getting closer. Soon the humans would face the full fury of the Vorthak swarm. But they were ready for it. They had been ready for it their whole lives. The battle in the tunnels was like nothing the Calarians had ever seen. The Vorthak drones poured down from above like a living flood of claws and teeth. But the humans did not run. They stood their ground and fought like the apex predators they were. Sergeant Webb had set up his team in a narrow tunnel where the drones could only come at them a few at a time. It was an old human trick. Take away the enemy's advantage in numbers by controlling the battlefield. "Here they come!" shouted Johnson as the first wave of drones rounded the corner. These ones were different from the surface attackers. They had been modified for tunnel fighting, with longer claws and better night vision. They moved like liquid death in the darkness, but humans had been fighting in dark places since they lived in caves. Martinez opened up with her machine gun, the muzzle flashes lighting up the tunnel like lightning. The bullets tore through the lead drones, but more kept coming. Johnson stepped up with his flamethrower, turning the narrow space into a wall of fire. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. Behind them, Dr. Kim was helping the Calarian survivors move toward the emergency exit. Scholar Tellen stayed close to her, watching the battle with amazement and horror. "Your people," Tellen said, having to shout over the gunfire. "They are not afraid." "Oh, they are terrified," Dr. Kim replied, helping an injured Calarian to his feet. "But humans learned a long time ago that being afraid and giving up are two different things." The Vorthak tried a new strategy. They released gas into the tunnels, a poison that should have killed everything in minutes. But the humans just sealed their suits tighter and kept fighting. They had trained for chemical attacks since the First World War. When the drones tried to overwhelm them with psychic terror, waves of fear that had broken the minds of other species, the humans gritted their teeth and pushed through it. They had faced existential dread every day of their evolution. A little more was not going to stop them. "Doc!" Webb called out during a brief pause in the fighting. "How much farther to the exit?" 200 meters, she replied. "But Marcus, I am picking up something big coming this way, really big." The tunnel walls began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling as something massive moved through the earth above them. Then, with a crash that knocked everyone to the ground, part of the ceiling collapsed. Through the hole dropped something that should not have been possible. It was a Vorthak broodmaster, a creature the size of a tank, covered in armor plates and armed with claws that could cut through steel. Its head was mostly mouth, filled with rotating rows of teeth. Acid dripped from its jaws and hissed where it hit the floor. The Calarians screamed and cowered. Even some of the humans took a step back. This was something out of their worst nightmares. But Webb just smiled grimly and pulled out his rocket launcher. "You know what?" he said to the monster. "I have been having a really bad day." The rocket hit the Broodmaster's center mass and exploded in a ball of fire and metal. The creature screamed and charged forward, wounded but not dead. Webb rolled to the side as massive claws scraped the walls where he had been standing. Johnson came at the beast from the side with his shotgun, aiming for what looked like weak points in its armor. Martinez climbed onto its back and started planting explosive charges. The Broodmaster spun and thrashed, trying to shake her off, but she held on like a rodeo rider. It was Dr. Kim who figured out how to kill it. She had been studying Vorthak biology for weeks, and she noticed something about the creature's movements. "The nerve cluster!" she shouted. "Behind its head! There is a cluster of nerves that controls the whole body!" Webb did not hesitate. He aimed his last rocket at the spot Dr. Kim had indicated and fired. The explosion was smaller this time, but it hit exactly the right place. The Broodmaster stopped moving instantly, like someone had turned off a switch. The tunnel went quiet except for the sound of human breathing and Calarian whimpering. Then Webb's radio crackled to life. "All teams, this is Rodriguez. We have a problem." Back on the surface, Captain Rodriguez was looking at scanner readings that made no sense. The Vorthak were not just random monsters attacking everything they found. They had a plan, an intelligence guiding them. "The whole planet is one big organism," reported Dr. Kim over the radio from the tunnels. "The individual drones are just body parts. There is something at the center that controls everything, a queen or a brain or something like that." "Where?" asked Rodriguez. "The old planetary core, about 50 kilometers down, directly under the capital. The Vorthak have been digging toward it since they arrived." Colonel Martinez, who was leading another rescue team on the other side of the city, spoke up on the radio. "Captain, if we do not stop this queen thing soon, it will not matter how many drones we kill. It will just make more." Rodriguez looked at the readings from deep scanning equipment. The path to the core was through tunnels filled with every kind of Vorthak nightmare imaginable. The temperature down there was over 200 degrees. The air pressure would crush most species, and the radiation levels would cook unprotected flesh in minutes. In other words, it was like the deep mines on Earth, or the thermal vents at the bottom of the ocean, or any of a dozen other places where humans had learned to work and fight. "All teams, continue rescue operations," Rodriguez ordered. "Martinez, take your team and secure the surface. Webb, get those civilians to the evacuation ships." "What about the Queen?" asked Webb. Rodriguez smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I am going down there myself, with a very small team and a very big bomb." Scholar Tellin, who had been listening to the radio chatter, looked up at Dr. Kim with worry. "Your captain is going to try to reach the core?" "That is impossible. No one can survive that journey." Dr. Kim looked at the brave Calarian elder with the kind of smile that humans got when someone told them something could not be done. "Scholar Tellin," she said gently, "let me tell you something about humans. We spent our whole history being told that things were impossible. Walking on two legs was impossible. Making fire was impossible. Flying was impossible. Going to space was impossible. And yet here we are, on your planet, fighting monsters that were supposed to be unbeatable." She helped the last of the Calarian survivors toward the exit. "The Vorthak Queen thinks she is safe down there because no sane creature would try to reach her. The problem is, humans stopped being completely sane about 1,000,000 years ago." Above them, Captain Rodriguez was already suiting up for the descent into hell. She knew the odds. She knew most of her team would not come back. But she also knew that sometimes impossible was just another word for something no one had been crazy enough to try yet, and humans had always been crazy enough. Captain Rodriguez stood at the edge of a hole that went straight down into the heart of Calaria Prime. The opening was 3 meters wide and so deep that their lights could not reach the bottom. Heat waves rose from below, carrying the smell of sulfur and something else something organic and wrong. With her were only 3 other humans: Sergeant Webb, who had insisted on coming despite his injuries, Dr. Kim, because they needed someone who understood Vorthak biology, and Specialist Torres, their best demolitions expert. Everyone else was either evacuating Calarian civilians or holding the surface against increasingly desperate Vorthak attacks. "Thermal readings show it is about 400 degrees down there," Torres reported, checking her instruments. "Air pressure is 6 times Earth normal, and the radiation—" She shook her head. "Let us just say we are going to need new suits after this." "If we live long enough to need them," Webb added cheerfully. They began their descent on rappelling lines, moving down through layers of Vorthak biomass that had grown over the old mining tunnels. The walls pulsed like the inside of a giant heart. Strange veins of liquid metal ran through the organic material, carrying signals to and from whatever waited at the bottom. As they went deeper, the attacks began. Vorthak creatures that lived in the walls reached out to grab them. Flying things that looked like bats made of knives dove at their lines, but the humans had prepared for this too. They carried small explosive charges that they could throw without stopping their descent. 30 kilometers down, reported Torres. Still no sign of the Queen. "She is there," Dr. Kim said with certainty. "I can feel her. The whole planet is like her nervous system, and we are heading for her brain." The temperature kept rising. Their suits' cooling systems were working at maximum, but sweat still poured down their faces. The radiation levels would have killed most species in minutes, but humans had evolved with some natural resistance. Their ancestors had survived cosmic radiation during long migrations and background radiation from natural sources. At 40 kilometers down, they found the first of the Queen's Guardians. These were not the relatively small drones they had fought on the surface. These were Vorthak destroyers. Creatures the size of buildings, with armor like starship hulls and weapons that could level city blocks. The first destroyer rose from the wall as they descended past it. It was shaped like a massive spider, but its legs were organic cannons that fired explosive bioprojectiles. Each shot could have destroyed a tank. But humans had learned to fight things bigger than themselves a long time ago. "David and Goliath time," Webb muttered, pulling out a shaped charge. He swung over on his line and attached the explosive to what looked like a joint in the creature's armor. The explosion took off one of its legs, sending it crashing into the wall. Dr. Kim had studied the creatures for weeks and knew their weak points. "The brain case is behind the primary weapon cluster," she shouted, "about 3 meters back from the front." Torres did not hesitate. She planted a high explosive charge exactly where Dr. Kim had indicated and detonated it remotely. The destroyer's head exploded in a shower of biofluid and metal fragments. They continued down, fighting 3 more destroyers and countless smaller guardians. Their ammunition was running low, and their suits were starting to show damage from the heat and acid. But they kept going because giving up was not something humans did. At 50 kilometers down, they finally reached the Queen's chamber. It was vast, a cavern the size of a football stadium carved out of the planet's core. The walls were covered with a network of organic computers that pulsed with bioluminescent light. And at the center, connected to everything by thousands of fleshy cables, was the Vorthak Queen herself. She was beautiful in a terrible way, part machine, part living creature, part something else entirely. She was the size of a city block, with a head that was mostly brain tissue protected by metallic bone. Her eyes were like black stars, ancient and intelligent and completely without mercy. When she spoke, her voice filled their minds directly, bypassing their ears entirely. "So," the Queen said, "the Deathworlders finally arrive. I have been curious about your species since my children first encountered you." Rodriguez stepped forward, holding the nuclear device that was their last hope. "This ends now. Call off your swarm and leave this system." The Queen laughed, a sound like breaking glass inside their heads. "You cannot threaten me, little predator. I have consumed 1,000 worlds. I have devoured species far older and wiser than yours. What makes you think 4 humans can do what entire galactic fleets could not?" "Because," Rodriguez replied, "we are too stupid to know when we are beaten." She activated the bomb's timer. 60 seconds until detonation. The Queen's mental laughter stopped. "You would die to deny me this world? How primitive." "Primitive works," Webb said, raising his rifle. Even though he knew it could not seriously hurt the Queen, he was ready to fight to the end. "You do not understand," the Queen continued. "I am immortal. I am inevitable. I have backup copies of myself scattered across the galaxy. Destroying this body will only delay me." Dr. Kim stepped forward. She had been studying the Queen's bio-network during the entire conversation, and she had realized something important. "You are lying," she said simply. "You are not immortal. You are dying." The Queen's massive eyes focused on the small human scientist. "Explain." "You have been consuming worlds for thousands of years, but you have never adapted to new environments. You just overwhelmed them with force. But this time, you met something you could not overwhelm. Us. And fighting us is killing you." Dr. Kim pointed to the biocomputers around the chamber. "Your network is overloading. Your children keep reporting impossible things. Creatures that should run but fight instead. Weapons that should not work but do. Tactics that make no sense but succeed. Your organic computers cannot process it." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke again, and for the first time, there was uncertainty in her mental voice. "What are you?" Rodriguez smiled grimly. "We are what happens when a death world decides to get up and walk around. We are the thing that evolution creates when everything else tries to kill it and fails." The bomb timer reached 10 seconds. "Wait," the Queen said. "We can negotiate. I can offer you—" "No," Rodriguez interrupted. "Some things cannot be negotiated with. Some things just need to be stopped." The nuclear device exploded in a ball of fire brighter than the sun. The Queen's scream echoed through every Vorthak creature on the planet as her network collapsed. Without her guiding intelligence, the swarm began to turn on itself, the individual creatures reverting to their basic programming. On the surface, the other humans watched as the twisted biostructures began to wither and die. The poisoned atmosphere started to clear. The planet's natural systems began to reassert themselves. 3 days later, Ambassador Velix stood before the Galactic Council again. But this time, he was not alone. Captain Rodriguez stood beside him, her uniform torn and her face scarred from the mission. Behind them, a hologram showed Calaria Prime slowly healing. "The human fleet lost 37% of its personnel," Velix reported to the assembled aliens. "Casualties that would have ended any other species' involvement. But they completed their mission. My people are free, and the Vorthak Queen is dead." The council chamber was silent. Representatives who had dismissed humans as barbarians just days before now looked at them with something approaching awe. General Zix of the Zephyrian Empire spoke first. "How did they succeed where we believe success was impossible?" Rodriguez answered simply. "Because we come from a world where impossible things happen every day, where survival means adapting to anything the universe throws at you, where sometimes the only sane response to insanity is to be a little crazy yourself." She looked around the chamber at all the aliens who represented ancient, peaceful civilizations. "You built your societies by avoiding danger. We built ours by conquering it. When you needed someone crazy enough to charge into hell for strangers, you needed Deathworlders." Lord Brightness of the Luminous Collective flickered with what might have been respect. "The galaxy owes you a great debt." "The galaxy owes us nothing," Rodriguez replied. "We did not do this for glory or payment. We did it because it was right." As she left the council chamber, Valix walked with her. "Captain, I must ask again, why did your people risk so much for mine?" Rodriguez paused at the door and looked back at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. "Because someone had to, and because we could." Later, alone in her ship, Rodriguez filed her final mission report. She wrote about the courage of her people, the losses they had taken, and the victory they had achieved. But she also wrote about something else she had learned. Sometimes the monsters you needed to fight monsters were not monsters at all. Sometimes they were just people who had learned that survival meant never giving up, no matter how bad things got. Sometimes they were just humans. The galaxy had learned that lesson too, and they would remember it for a very long time.